Good morning and afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Sage Fixed Assets user group session. Today we're talking about tax book implementation and how to build compliance and efficiency there. And we're very excited to have you all join us today. But before we dive in, just a quick bit of housekeeping. All attendees are currently on mute to minimize any background noise. We'll go ahead and open up the lines for our live Q&A towards the end of today's session. But for now, feel free to go ahead and submit your questions at any time using the questions panel in your GoToWebinar dashboard. And before I go any further, I am now thrilled to announce we have Angie Bolton today as our speaker. And for those of you who may have not have had the pleasure, Angie is just such a seasoned expert in fixed asset management. She's got a really deep experience helping fixed asset users to build smarter and more compliant tax books. So also, as a bonus to Sage and Sage Fixed Assets, she is now our senior product manager, which is amazing. As you can guess from the title of our session, she's going to walk us through what to consider if you haven't implemented a tax book yet and how to optimize one if you have. She also has a number of related insights and best practices, and she'll have some tools to review with you that are already baked into Sage Fixed Assets for things like audits and system defaults and adjustment settings. So whether you're just getting started or you're looking to fine tune, Angie's insights I know are just going to help you move forward with confidence in whatever you're doing in Sage Fixed Assets. So without further ado, let's get started. Angie, over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Tawny, and housekeeping. So without wasting any time, let's get started. Our agenda today is going to be pretty simple since we only have 30 minutes, and I want to dive into the product and show a few things while we're here. So first, we're just going to talk about understanding the reasons for the tax books and just some things to consider if you haven't already, or if you have, maybe a little deeper dive into those discussion points. How to implement the tax books within the Sage Fixed Assets. We're going to talk about the two different ways, like either you're already using Sage Fixed Assets, but only the internal book, and you think, well, how hard will it be? What are the steps I need to take to implement the tax books? And or I'm thinking about purchasing FAS, or I just purchased FAS, and I'm thinking about implementing the tax books. I'm not sure if now's the time, and those kind of implications or benefits of doing it all at once. Best practices to keep that accuracy and compliance moving forward. We're going to dive into the system, show you a few things, only tax-based, so this whole thing is about tax-related, and then open up for live Q&A. Okay. Book tax implementation. When we talk about implementing the tax books, we're really talking about the return on our investment. I'm a huge fan of, if I'm investing thousands of dollars in a software solution, why am I only using one of its offerings when there's like 5 more offerings and I'm not getting the best return on my investment? The biggest return on investment in any depreciation system that I've found to be true is if you're using it right alongside the tax books. Why is that, Angie? Well, that's a good question. First of all, there's a significant time saving when we put all our eggs in one basket, specifically in automated solutions. We're saving a lot of time across the board. If you think about everyone that touches fixed assets, not just internal finance and accounting, but if we're talking about tax depreciation, if we're talking about state, property tax, insurance, for larger organizations, maybe you have SOX compliance and testing, internal and external audit as well, other third-party CPAs. As you can tell, I'm losing breath over here because there's so many places that touch fixed assets. So if you just think of that top level, then you're like, oh yeah, why aren't we putting it all in one place to make it easier for ourselves? So not only does it automate the depreciation calculations, gets you out of spreadsheets, gets all the errors out of the way because you're in a system, not a spreadsheet, but it also significantly reduces quarter end and year end close times from a tax perspective. If you just think about what your process looks like right now for tax depreciation, if you're not using it in Sage Fixed Assets, right? If I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what does she mean? I mean, if you're just using it for the internal book, what do you have to pass along to tax or audit or property tax or insurance, what does that look like to you on a quarterly, sometimes monthly, and annual basis? Are you taking reports out of Sage Fixed Assets for the internal book, dumping them to Excel, massaging the data, adding in columns, reconciling different things, and then passing that information on to somebody else for tax, state, insurance, property tax at that time of year, just so they can do the exact same thing, but even deeper and more spreadsheets? If that's your answer, then I'm so glad you're here today. Okay. It also streamlines the reporting process for tax forms, your audit prep, which makes it much more streamlined. And when I'm talking about quarter end and year end prep and close times, I'm talking about that reconciliation of the additions, the disposals, any cost adjustments that happen that may not be reflected in the offline or outsourced records for tax depreciation. And then if something happens there, you have to have an expert come in sometimes, or you're staying late or over the weekend with your laptop, figuring out where that disconnect is with your data. So at the end, the ROI just in this block right here saves dozens to sometimes hours of manual labor annually. So just that on its own is pretty significant. It also prevents costly errors. So again, when we're automating everything, putting it into one place, one central location, we also decrease the misalignments. Again, that misalignment of data, of the additions, disposals, transfers, sales, adjustments I just spoke about. It also minimizes the risk. So when we're putting it all in one place, and we can see, like in the Sage Fixed Asset system, outside of our competitors, what's cool is we can see all those books in one place. So we can easily and quickly identify if the data looks correct across all the depreciation books. We don't have to, look up, we don't have to open up extra screens that fly in our face or run a multitude of reports and put them together. We can see right away on a per asset basis what looks off, and we can fix it in that moment. Okay, so some things that I've seen in the 26 plus years and going with this, especially in my consulting days, is that we often see misalignment in property types, because in internal GAAP and finance, we don't really care as much if it's real property or personal property or somewhere in a hurricane zone or anything like that. We really just depreciate, right, with its methods and lives and by class and move forward. But for tax perspective, it's much different, because it gets pushed onto the form differently. It gets different tax treatment for expenses and deductions, for bonus depreciation, or different things depending on the industry and the geographical location of those assets. So it's really important that we pay attention to that. And if we're not taking care of that in-house, how do we know, right? Also, inconsistent service dates. If we are outsourcing our tax depreciation, right, most of the time, I would say, I'm going to throw out a number, definitely picking from the stars, but educated. I would probably say anywhere between 70 to 75% of the data that is outsourced is misaligned by place and service dates and cost most of the time. And why is that? Because typically when finance is caught in their everyday, mode, right? We're entering assets or importing our assets, we're processing the disposals, we're entering adjustments, and even with the adjustments, sometimes we're a month, two, in unfortunate circumstances with volume and life, we could be 6 months behind. And so instead of doing true ups, we're going now deeper and taking out those bulk true up amounts, and we're actually putting that information into the asset level, but nobody's recording that to the outsourcing agent, right? So that's where that really comes into play heavily, is that it's misaligned because it's delayed. So if we're delayed in our finance books, then the tax book is going to be even more delayed. And a lot of times I see it by years, right? We don't want that, because especially in these economic times, in this landscape, we want those deductions and we want control of those. We don't want them in 2 years from now. We want them this year. So that's why it's really important to keep it all in one hood, under one hood. So the ROI for this particular block, it avoids IRS penalties, audit issues, and the need to hire or outsource for true ups, right? And then it also ensures that we're getting that information and those deductions in a timely manner for our business. The next ROI for implementing tax books that maybe you haven't thought of is the complex scenarios, right? I hear all the time. I also used to sell the product as well as implement it and consult on it. And what I heard a lot was, well, I'm in finance and we drove the sale of this. I don't know tax depreciation, Angie. And I said, well, that's great. You don't have to, because that's why the tax book is the first book in the Sage fixed asset system. It was built by tax professionals. That's how it was born, right? That being said, if you ever noticed when you go to enter in an asset manually, when you do the tax book, all you have to do is select the property type. Most of the stuff is personal. Put in the service date and the cost, and the rest fills in for you. And what does that mean? That means it's already assuming and suggesting the proper method in life based on those two factors, the property type and the place of service date, with the rules that are written into the system. Okay. So there's a lot of talk about certain depreciation systems, like, oh, my ERP, I want it all in one place with my ERP. Well, that's great for finance and straight line depreciation. That's an easy math equation, right? It's a straight line. But what an ERP does not have, and I haven't found one that does yet, is the complex tax depreciations of the rule base behind the scenes that you don't see, right? Those calculations that get updated in the system each time something new happens, the bonus depreciation percentages, all that stuff it's put into the system refresh automatically. Now, any ERP system can put a declining balance 200 to 100 in the system and say that's tax-based, but that is not true tax-based. What true tax-based and complex tax scenarios are the maker's methods, which have a different tables, different scenarios, report differently on 4562s, okay? Also can take care of ADS, AMT, if that comes back online again. Currently, it's not, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't populate it, because, well, that stuff changes quite often, right? Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off, depends on the administration or economy, but it's good to have it there too, right? Again, everything in one place. It's good to have all of this stuff, and it's good to have a system to rely on that knows exactly what it's doing and pushes it out to you so that you don't have to educate yourself on it. You're simply just moving through your day. Okay. ROI here is, and I know this number might be big for some of you online, but this is just kind of a medium zone for companies, and it's been tested, and I've seen this myself firsthand. Companies with over 200,000 assets often find manual systems they can't keep up with them, right? They can't scale, they don't grow with their business, and they've missed millions, sometimes I've seen, upon millions of dollars of missed deductions and or overpayments with either tax or property tax specifically, or insurance too, because they just can't keep track of it efficiently. The next one is enables confidence audit ready reporting. I can't stress this enough. I talk about this all the time. I could probably do a seminar just on like audit ready systems just for fixed assets alone, honestly. And the things I've seen are indescribable sometimes, but when you have all your data in one place and you know it's reconciled because you can see it there, it's all in the same place. When we change the cost on one book, we know we need to change the other because it's right there, right in front of us. And then what happens is that we can start, making sure that we have accuracy, which also reduces our risk, right? And that the documentation is always there ready for us. And what does that mean? That means that 9 times out of 10 when I'm on site, or I did it myself in a large company as a director of fixed assets, I always got questions about, can you hand me this? Can you hand me this? The auditor, internal or external, wants to see this. The CPA needs this. The insurance adjuster needs this. And if you have scattered systems and not in one place, that could be impossible to gather, or it may even take a month or a couple weeks, and then by then some of it's probably outdated, right? If it's all in one system and they want to see the differences between tax versus internal, you have that all in one place. It's no more like, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this, my schedule is too busy, I have other projects, but they need it now. That goes away. It just goes away, right? So these are another serious benefits. And then also the biggest ROI here is that it reduces these outsourced CPA or audit fees, which are so expensive. I'm working with a client now, actually, who is going through a purchase price allocation nightmare. are continuously waiting for their tax CPAs. And although they're drudging out the process of finalizing numbers, but that's not the only thing they're doing. They're just dredging it out, and figuring out if they should even do it internally or externally. And just those hours of trying to figure out for the client, which is no service to the client, of should they keep it in-house or outsource the tax piece, is costing them money before they even charge the fees for doing the work. So think about that, and that makes me cringe. And that's what's happening on the other side when you don't take control of this data internally, when you certainly can with the system. Okay. And finally, when you have this all together, it optimizes the fixed asset strategy, not just for the level of data entry and the managers and the directors, but all the way up to the CFOs, okay? So it means that even they now have the data readily available that's accurate, so they can make better strategic decisions for capital investments, for sales and disposal strategies, for M&A strategies. They can do their modeling, of scenarios of what does this look like? What kind of expenses are we looking at within fixed assets? Should we open a new facility? Should we remodel one? And all of a sudden their forecasting gets better, tighter, and more accurate, so they can make better decisions. So it all flows up throughout the entire organization. Implementation strategies. First, are you using Sage Fixed Assets already? And if you are, if you haven't implemented the tax books, these are some things to consider to implement. First, before you even get started, you should take an actionable plan and path to implement the tax books. You want to know, what's that look like? Where is the data coming from? Is it coming from an outsource? Is it coming from internal department heads? Is it coming from spreadsheets? What do those spreadsheets look like? If it's coming from an outsourced CPA or a tax accountant, make sure that you're getting an Excel document, not PDF. Do not listen to them that they can't get a PDF. That's baloney. You always demand an Excel spreadsheet. It's your data. Every system can push to Excel. I don't care what they say, okay? Start there, and then you'll need to export your data out of Sage Fixed Assets. I know it sounds scary, but Sage makes it pretty easy to get your data out of the system. It's your software, it's your data. There's no limitations. And then you need to start working through the reconciliation process to ensure that your outsourced data reconciles line by line to your internal data. If it doesn't, because a lot of CPAs too, if it's exported, or some departments, because it could be so painful, right, to do this process off of a spreadsheet for the tax department, sometimes they bulk things together. You'll need to work with them to make sure that you're separating that out to get line by line. And then you'll need to format it, right? We'll talk about some of those reformatting in the next step too. And then you'll just re-import into a new company. So yes, you'll have to import into a new company that's all fresh. Keep a backup of your old one for historical purposes, but you'll create a new one that has all the books populated and import them all at once, okay? And then you'll re-reconcile to make sure it all looks okay, and you'll be complete, and then you can move forward, all right? So housekeeping, make sure you have some best practices to get the best ROI out of there. Meaning, make sure you have a good team that knows what they're doing. You have to keep communication lines open with the tax department or the person who's taking care of the tax, okay? Because you'll probably notice, if that's your case, there will be a disconnect. There always is. I've seen so many spreadsheets, I can't even tell you, and I still get surprised by how people format their spreadsheets. It's like Godspeak out there with spreadsheet land. But I've even noticed that even if there's only 250 asset line items versus 250,000, there's still a disconnect, especially if it was never consolidated, meaning the tax books versus the internal. So just go through a fine-tooth comb. Once you're happy with it, then you can import it to a new company and be done and move forward, okay? Then you get all the benefits we just discussed. The next is, if, you know what, I just bought Sage Fixed Assets, or I'm thinking about it, and I haven't implemented FASIT at all. Perfect timing. Even if you went into this project thinking, oh, I'm just going to implement my internal, I'll deal with tax later. Based on the conversation we just had, can you already see how it's just best if you just do it all at once? It doesn't really cost that much more because you're just doing the bulk of it already. So it's not about a cost issue. It's about preparation, right? So it's always best, and every time I used to sell this, I'd always say it's best to do it all at once, even if you're not gonna, be super happy about it. It's just best to do it all at once. You're gonna love it at the end, and they always do, right? Because what you're doing now is you're getting all of the compliance and audit readiness things, at the beginning, at the front, right? And you're getting control. It's all about taking back the control of your data, okay? And I had this slide in the last users group, and I just want to bring it up because this sounds like a crazy, crazy thing to do, Angie. I'm going to dump my data out, reconcile it with outsourced stuff, and put it back in. Remember, you can't break the system, okay? It's all about confidence. This game is about knowledge and confidence and baby steps, right? With actionable plan. Okay, you cannot break the system. If you say, oh, I found this one, maybe I am using the tax books, but I see these changes that I need to make when I dove in further, because that all makes sense if it's all put together. I should dive in further and see what that means. So again, you can use those current through dates, those place of service dates, those critical changes that we talked about in last month's breakout session. Again, you cannot break the system. If you want to implement the tax books, just make sure you do a Sage fixed asset backup, save it off to the side somewhere, and you can always restore it in somewhere else if you need to. You can always start over, okay? Confidence. So some best practices, which we talked about in last user group session, they still apply here. They still apply when we were talking about implementing the tax books, right? Keeping an audit trail, all the reporting, all the utility ports we can use once our data is in there. Reconcile until the cows come home. And now that we have all the data in the system, that snapshots is way better, way more of a better offering now, because we can see it side by side. We can export or report those snapshots out and place them next to each other. We can also do the asset list export by book really quickly and just slap them together to reconcile pretty fast. We don't have to worry about formatting, all those things. And then again, it's just ensuring that we don't trigger these other issues that we see below and that we just talked about with the ROI piece. Okay. So I'm going to move the Sage fixed assets over here. And I'm in a company, but I'm actually going to, and I know I can see this, but when I'm in here, what I was talking about is the exporting. So it's like I have all the books. Let me go to reports as a snapshot. And when I have all the books here, this is what I'm talking about becomes so much more relevant and helpful, especially if someone comes to you and says, I need all this data at my fingertips. What can you do for me? You can pop in here so quickly and then just report these out. Now my screen is all funky because I'm on a server, but let me see if I can narrow this down a little bit. There's a print or button down the below of this snapshot. There we go. And this is really helpful. This is where you can do depreciation calculation comparisons. The one I use the most when I was actually a user is acquisition comparison. I could push this out right away. And if I already had a variance that I knew of because of an M&A or something like that, or a cost seg study analysis or impairment processes, but if I already knew what that was and it still looked off, then I was like, oh no, where was I off? That I can go in, look for that data, fix it, and bring it back to where it needed to be, okay? Other things is that if we're here, we can enable asset list totals, and we can also create my views to look at different books, right? So sample recon, I'm gonna add here, I'm gonna close, and instead I'm going to come up here and customize my asset list, yeah? And here I can say I want all this information. These are all my book information that I like, and I can dump them over here. And on the other hand, I can move all the stuff I don't really care about for this particular report, right? Like why? Okay, and then this is where I toggle between my books. And yes, although currently I can only do one book at a time, but because this dumps out into a very basic Excel format, which is what we need, right? Then I can dump them out and marry them together really quickly, okay? And this also shows me my totals. Or if I need to get in here really quickly to reconcile this stuff to make sure it's accurate, or if I have my tax book and someone says, what does, a particular group look like in headquarters for my tax book? And, you could put your filters on here as much as you want, and you can come in here and look at it right away. And then you can even export this information out with the subtotals. Or if they're just looking for them out, you can simply do a Snagit screenshot, or just give them the totals and be on your way. And this is what I'm talking about. If everything's in one place, right, then you have all that information really quickly in your fingertips. Okay. And then, of course, we have all different reports that are sectioned by the tax reports that you now have at your fingertips. You have mid-quarter applicability, which helps. You can then, do the switches. We have switches till the cows come home, right? Under depreciation, we could switch bonus, no bonus. We could switch what percentage of bonus we need to turn back on or take off. We have the maker switch if we run the maker applicability at the end of the year for tax. So all these things are built in. Nothing is individually asset by asset. There's a lot of bulk functionality in here. There's bulk edit by depreciation method, property types. So we have all the tools in here to make it so easy for you, even if you're not the tax professional. I'll open for questions, Tony.
All right, just a moment, and I'm unmuting everyone, or at least attempting to. For now, everyone, if you have questions, please start putting them in the question box, and I will unmute you all as the system requires, which seems to be one at a time. You'll notice you're coming on off of mute. You can always put yourself back on if you want. All right, and you see yourself off mute, you can go ahead and ask a question.
Put me on mute. That was funny. I do see one question.
I'm sorry.
I do see one question that says, do you have anywhere in Sage a simple readable changes by state federal tax changes? So for state changes, if you go to the Assistance Center when you first log in, you'll see industry resources over here to the left, right? You can see GASB, you can see this. You can go to the IRS, the state tax laws, and that in change will take you to a place that gives you state laws and federal laws for depreciation as well. Also, not for state changes, but for federal things that are written in the system, you can also go to help topics in the system itself, and you can look for IRS tables to see, how everything is being calculated. You can even look for bonus right here, and it'll say which bonus. It'll have the rules. It gives you examples. So make sure that as a user, you're using all these tools that are in the system, because it's almost overkill, but it's only overkill if we know they're there, right?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And now everyone is off mute, so feel free to pop in any questions you may have. Hey, Angie, I especially loved how you kind of empowered everyone with their tax professionals and just let them know that just don't settle for things. That's your day.
Yeah, in fact, I had to, I felt compelled to assist my customer who's having all this trouble with the CPAs. Like, stand your ground. You're paying them. Remember that you're paying them.
All right, that said, I don't think that we have any additional questions. Oh, yes, we do. Let's see. We have one.
Read that one, Maya.
That says, will this be available to watch again later as a recording? Absolutely, Anne, it will. And our next question, Angie, is our FAS is on a server computer. For those who may not know, FAS is the same as Sage Fixed Assets. It's just a name that's been around for a long time. Do you have an Excel or other form to add assets to FAS that you can email over, as they can't download the one of the system?
Are you asking for a template? Yes, I can, yeah, I can just email me. Here, email me at the end. Here's my email address. Is my email address up here?
I don't know that it is, but I can put it right here in our chat.
Yeah, we'll put it in the chat, but it's angela.bolton@sage.com. So here's my name with a dot and then at sage.com. And email me any help you need, and I'll be sure to assist you the best way I can, or forward you to who could. But I could probably answer any questions. And yes, I can send you a template.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next question is, I'm sorry, can you go to help and go to 168 bonus? I tried but couldn't locate it.
And to the help topics. And if you go to either search or index, it's at the top because of the number sequence that's ascending. Yeah. And then you can dive into anything, anytime you see a hyperlink, it takes you deeper into that information.
Great.
Yeah. And here's assets that qualify for. Yeah, you can type anything in here. Also talks about alternative accounting periods and changing, and yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Angie. And that was very helpful. You're welcome, Samantha.
Of course.
And if we don't have any other questions, then that is the end of our session.
Well, thank you, everybody. Remember, confidence is key in anything we do, and software is no different. So if you have any questions or need any assistance or would like to talk about how your plan should look to implement, just give me an email and I'd love to help.
All right. Thank you so much, Angie. We appreciate all of your
Everybody.
sharing it with us. Take care,
Thank you.
everybody.